Okay, now I've got a few minutes to take a look at these particular errors a little bit better. Um, I I still have come to the conclusion, or I still have a theory, that the problem is occurring because the system is recalculating or relinking meshes together. Um, for example, you have an NPC that's going to be walking around and you move things dynamically, and then you let that item go. If it doesn't, if the game, and I don't recall right off if this is true or not, it'd be easy to test, but if you move the object around and the NPC has collision detection for it, which I don't think it does, like let's say you're in workshop mode, you can literally put a building on top of somebody, so there's no collision for it. But once you let that object go, then the game calculates collision and then tries to recalculate the positions of whatever might be in and around that object. So if you set, let's say, the ground or like a piece of flooring over an NPC, it'll try to move the NPC on top of that flooring. So there is a dynamic relinking of meshes together to form a virtual 3D world, in effect. So when I looked at the very first time I had this error, and I actually incorrectly stated in the previous video I never had this before because I didn't even think to look this up, but I did initially have a loose file stream, which was right here. And what this was when I was moving the pylon with the keypad, its place everywhere. And I mean, I was hammering that thing down pretty quick. So I was moving the pylon, I was shifting the pylon, and I believe the game, because it's done with place everywhere, it doesn't know that, like, let's say there's not a delay in the key press. So the game was trying to recalculate the new position of the object. So, and in trying to recalculate that new position by trying to build that virtual 3D world of all these linked meshes, I think it got caught interim. It got caught in the middle of that, and it was referencing the mesh or something that was no longer at a particular position or something along those lines. And that is why that came up. But if you look, if you notice, right, let me de-highlight these real quick. So if you notice, this one is that 10020, which is a kernel based. It's a kernel-based error, and I thought those were precombines. And I'm going to show you that's going to come up again. Now, this might be part of the precombined system where it's trying to mathematically combine meshes together. Like let's say something gets deleted in the environment, you definitely don't want to produce LOD for it because it's no longer there. So it could be something still in the precombine, but not a fault of precombine, but the fact that somehow what it needs is moved or just simply doesn't exist. So if we come down to the next one, of course we got to skip the UI crash. And we can skip the resource creator because I believe this one was, yeah, see again, that's the kernel base. But notice this. This popped up again. So I'm not sure if this was like a loose file or maybe if there was a problem with precombines using textures that, like, or let's say like LOD Gen was created with certain textures, and then all of a sudden you replace those textures with something else. It causes it to, just completely, it just confuses it. So that I'm not sure about. So in regards to that, I'm going to skip that one. But if you look, I've got the same thing here. All right, let's bring this up here just to verify that. Okay, so see, it's the same thing here. Now, these happened, this one here, which is above that, and above that, those two happened when I had just imported a settlement with transfer settlements. Now it looks like what he does, he imports the item and then he selects the item just as though you clicked on it in workshop mode. And that basically causes the game to try and connect the item to whatever it is. Or you can just simply select the item, which moves it a little bit, and then if you just hit tab, it exits back out. And then you can do that, you can do that for objects that are powered, like lights. So if for some reason the light doesn't power up and it's within that powered radius, you can select that light, hit tab, and then it powers up. So I think he's doing something similar to that in his DLL by since it's linked into FS or Fallout Script Extender, he's hooking into Fallout 4, which then he's hooking the calls to select and deselect an object, and that's how he's quote quote stabilizing it. Okay, so the geometry thing, I'm pretty sure that had to do with precombines, but we're back to 20. There's a loose file stream. I don't think this is 20. Let me see here. Let me take a look at this and see what that might be. Yes, it is. See, and it's the same thing. And that's the one that I had where the TidyBot was actually out scrapping stuff, and I was running in that direction. So I believe he was scrapping something in a cell that wasn't fully loaded, and then as I was getting close to it, or moving towards it, it went to scrap it, which it removed the mesh, but somehow it was still queued to display or recalculate the 3D virtual world, so that all these 3D objects, let's say there's no textures, you just have these 3D, you have mathematics in 3D, which allows you to move in and around things in a 3D environment. So either it was building that or something and the mesh moved or something happened, and that is what caused that. And then of course I've added mods and deleted mods, so I got a virtual machine crash here. And you can actually see that. Let me bring this up just to rule this out. Oops, let's see. Here we go. All right. So you can see virtual machine is all the way across the board. Like, it's everywhere. But we're back to this. So this seems to be a common kernel-based call. And if I take a look at, let's see here, does it have, now I haven't looked at this any more closely yet, but I probably will over time, to see if this kernel-based call can be linked back to a specific function, and then therefore that function can be something like adding to list, removing to list, just kind of basic. It's like kind of like a basic function call, a very low-level function call that you can do on a variety of objects, no matter what the objects are or what the intended purpose of the object is. So I have to take a look and see what that is. That might help to understand a little bit more of what's going on. But what I wanted you to see is that that was the same thing as this. So I'm thinking that the way Bethesda did it was they assumed that everything was on the player, right? So the player is the center, the cell is fully loaded because the player's had time to run up to it. So you're approaching something you want to scrap, you've had plenty of time to run up to it, everything is cool. You scrap that. You can't be scrapping 50 things a second, because you still have to do key presses, you still have to wait for whatever delay it is for the action you do to be performed, to be executed. So there is a set amount of actions you can do in a given time frame. So that might give the system time to update, and it could be something they discovered. Hey, if we try to delete too many things too fast, all of a sudden we have a problem. Whereas when you script it, that may not come into play. So, and I think that might be an assumption flaw in the scripting process, to assume that because I can do something, the game engine is going to make sure that it's properly done. Being that all the data tables are linked lists, data tables, all the data is correct before it allows the next change to be made. So yeah, I just wanted to update on that, and that is what I think that is. I believe it has to do with because both the times I had those crashes, I used transfer settlements. I didn't go away for a while, and I think I loaded it back up or or went away and then came back. I think I actually loaded it back up. So I think it was actually in the process of settling itself in, and that is what caused that. So it's moving objects or NIFs, it's moving them around or removing them while they're in the process of some kind of update or in use in a calculation to determine a mathematical 3D world in which the NPC can interact. I hope that helps. I've got some more testing and coding I got to do, so I should be back here in a little bit.